Hi, everyone. Welcome to TorCon Books and Brunch with Mary Robinette Kowal. I'm Natalie Zutter, your moderator. I'm a pop culture critic and playwright, contributor to Den of Geek and Tor.com, and very delighted to be here with 964 of you and with Mary Robinette. And which cat is this?
This is Elsie.
Hi, Elsie.
Elsie, high five. Oh, come on. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, so we're here on Saturday, kicking off the first of two Books and Brunch series, both here on Crowdcast and streaming simultaneously on Facebook Live on the Tor Books and Den of Geek Facebook pages. And yeah, we're here for a nice hour-long kind of chill conversation with Mary Robinette about the Lady Astronaut series, and especially the latest book, The Relentless Moon. Let me properly introduce our guest. So, Mary Robinette Kowal is the author of the Glamorous Histories series, Ghost Talkers, and the Lady Astronaut novels. She's a member of the award-winning podcast Writing Excuses and has received the Astounding Award for Best New Writer, 4 Hugo Awards, the Nebula and Locus Awards. Her stories appear in Asimov's, Uncanny, and several years' best anthologies. Mary Robinette, a professional puppeteer, also performs as a voice actor, SAG-AFTRA, recording fiction for authors including Seanan McGuire, Cory Doctorow, and Neil Stevenson. She lives in Nashville with her husband, Rob, and over a dozen manual typewriters. Visit her online at maryrobinettekowal.com. So again, thank you for joining us.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here.
We both got some brunch cocktails to kick us off because we figured we would get in the mood, right?
Yeah.
So what have you brought to our brunch today?
I have brought Death in the Afternoon.
What is that?
It is a half ounce of absinthe, and then you fill it the rest of the way up with sparkling wine.
Beautiful.
It is delicious and seemed apropos for book and stuff. What do you have?
I was actually inspired by your books and made an aviation out of a little, what's the word? Engineered based on what was in my bar. So lime juice instead of lemon juice, gin, creme de violette, and instead of maraschino liqueur, we had some brandied cherries. So I just put some of that juice in there.
Oh, that sounds delicious. Every time I make an aviation, hello, Elsie. I don't have, for some reason, I don't have creme de violette. So I wind up doing it with a rose liqueur that I have, which is also lovely.
Does that make it more of a pink than a purple?
Yeah. I've also had, I did an aviation variation in which I used a mezcal. So for the smokiness that I jokingly called space flight. It's my tiny fur tentacle there.
I always love hearing about mezcal variations because that smokiness is really nice in a cocktail.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Mary Robinette is going to read a selection from The Relentless Moon. And in the meantime, just to let everyone know, you can put your questions here in Crowdcast. There's a little ask a question section at the bottom. You can also upvote each other's questions. And so once we get to the audience portion in half hour or so, we've already got plenty to go on. But feel free to vote for whatever you want to hear Mary Robinette address. And so whenever you're ready, please feel free if you want to give maybe a little context for the Lady Astronaut series and where this book is.
So the Lady Astronaut series begins in 1952 when I slam an asteroid into Washington, D.C. When I wrote it, it was not wish fulfillment. But anyway, basically it is at a point in which if you want to send computers into space, you have to send a human. And at that time, the computers were predominantly women. So that means sending women into space. It kicks off the space program fast and early. This is set about 10 years into that. It's a parallel novel with The Fated Sky. You can actually read Fated Sky or Relentless Moon in either order. You can do Calculating Stars and then whichever of those you want to do. Theoretically, this works as a standalone, I don't think that a giant meteor hitting the Earth is a spoiler since it happens in the first page of this of Calculating Stars. Okay.
Awesome.
Chapter 1. Halfway to Mars. John Swartz, special to the National Times. Kansas City, March 27th, 1963. If all goes as it should, and in space that is no sure thing, then sometime tomorrow 3 brave voyagers will cross a Rubicon that no man ever has, the halfway point between our home planet and Mars. It has been a mission of triumph and terror, of disasters averted and disasters tragically experienced as 13 astronauts and astronettes speed across the cosmic void. The mission has been a test not just of technology, but also of ingenuity, resourcefulness, and the human spirit. Like Julius Caesar, we must prepare for the worst, said Norman Clemens, director of the International Aerospace Coalition. That is our training. But we also strive for the best, and this wonderful team has trained for almost every eventuality. The astronauts and astronettes, a group composed of so many nationalities that Lady Astronaut Elma York called it a World's Fair in space, has been prepared years for this moment, and every moment of the months to come. After tomorrow's milestone, the spacemen will have just 27 million kilometers to go before reaching the red planet. How many places do you call home? For me, it could mean my parents' home in Detroit, or the governor's mansion that I share with my husband Kenneth, or my bunk on the lunar colony. But I've learned not to ask people where home is because after the meteor, so many people no longer have their true homes. I have switched to the more innocuous, "Where are you based?" which I was busily applying at the fundraiser tonight. While Ella Fitzgerald sang, I smiled at all the powerful men my husband wanted to charm so they would support his policies as governor. My diamonds sparkled around my neck and made a striking contrast to the astronaut's wings pinned to the peacock green taffeta of my evening gown. Being the glittering trophy wife was easier before I'd passed 50, but I was in better shape than I'd been in my 30s. I say that, but the arthritis in my feet protested each high-heeled step I took. I kept that masked along with my sigh of relief when Kenneth stopped us on the parquet floor for the umpteenth time. You remember Mr. Van, don't you, Nicole? I did not. Mr. Van was yet another flaccid, middle-aged white man with his glittering wife in tow. How lovely of you to come. My voice still had all the charm I'd learned in Swiss finishing school. Thank God they taught us how to hide boredom behind glitter. A pleasure, Mrs. Worgan. His accent was from the Midwest. I'd need another sentence to pin it down, but his vowels leaned that way. I don't believe you've met my wife, Bethany, yet. Oklahoma. It was the only place you got Midwest and Southern twang mixed in quite that way, which meant they probably hadn't lost a lot of family to the meteor, and also meant that the past 11 years had been enough to remove the urgency from their minds. I smiled at them both. Such a pleasure. Please do come visit me on the moon. Now, I want Bethany here on Earth where it's safe. Mr. Van patted his wife's arm in a way that would have had Kenneth sleeping on the couch for a week. I'm surprised you're letting the little lady go up there, Governor. Kenneth laughed, but his hand pressed on my lower back, letting me know that he could field this one. I leaned into him to accept his offer in the silent language that we've worked out over years of public service. He smiled at the man. I think you're mistaken if you believe my wife is a woman that people let do anything. Besides, living on the moon isn't that different, really. In many ways, the lunar colony is just like being in a small town. Why, we even have an art gallery, which I had set up. But the fact remains that it existed and we had art. And you work with Dr. Elma York, don't you? His wife's gaze focused on me, and what I had seen as vapidity was actually a boredom as thick as my own. Oh, yes, long before she was the famous Lady Astronaut. I was in the same class of astronauts as Elma, the first women chosen for the space program, but she would always be the Lady Astronaut. Mrs. Van's face brightened. How did you two meet? Well, we met as WASPs during the Second World War. This is true, but the fuller truth is that I don't remember how we met. Oh, I know we were both women Air Force service pilots, but it wasn't as though she was famous when we met. There were a lot of us. My first concrete memory of her is at a dance on the airbase in Palm Springs, where she was holding the hair of some hapless young pilot who had had too much to drink and was vomiting out her guts. But no one wants to hear about that as your first meeting with the Lady Astronaut. Mrs. Van sighed. I'd join up in a heartbeat if I qualified. If she were like me, her area of expertise was in planning menus, fundraising, and walking with a book balanced on her head. If not for being a WASP and having a husband who was at the time a senator, I never would have made the cut. Ella Fitzgerald's song came to an end. I wanted to yell at the people who did not understand what a gift her voice was and who did not even clap politely. In the pause before she started singing again, distant shouts sounded beyond the ballroom. They pulled my attention to the windows that stretched along one wall of the hotel. Beyond the filmy white curtains, there was a vivid orange glow like the base of a rocket at liftoff. My spine straightened, and I turned to Kenneth, leaning into him as if I were just being affectionate. Is something on fire outside? He followed my gaze. At the small of my back, his fingers tightened. Nicole, what? The window exploded in a shower of glass and flame. I grabbed Kenneth and spun him away, dragging us both down to a low crouch as my astronaut training kicked in. Something is exploding. Get low, seek cover, protect vulnerable body parts like your head and chest. And here I was in an off-the-shoulder gown. Screams sounded behind us. The haze of ennui that had coated me all evening evaporated. The room with its pudgy, middle-aged white men and their glamorous wives, and the waiters with their dark skin and white gloves snapped into focus as if I were in the seat of a T-38 jet. The best path to get Kenneth to safety was past the banquet tables and through the service door into the kitchen. Kenneth! I grabbed the sleeve of his tuxedo. We need to... A swarm of black-suited security men, all square jaws and buzz cuts, surrounded us. This way! One of them took my arm, another had Kenneth's. Frustration at being managed filled me for a moment, and it had no place here. These men were doing their jobs of protecting the governor and by extension, his wife. Me? I was hauled along the path to safety as if I were no more than a decorative bauble. And when I was on Earth, that was, in fact, my job. So that is the first scene of the book. I do read my own audiobooks. I just saw that in chat. Yes. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and let you all know that you should be looking for a thing because we are going to live stream me reading my narration process for the entire novel. There's a lot of cursing, just FYI. Natalie is appearing to have some reconnection issues, so that means I'm on my own. This is going to be fun, isn't it? So one of the things that I am looking forward to, oddly, I don't like the fact that we have this situation. Oh, look, Natalie's back. I was going to vamp.
Hi. You were doing great. You don't even need me. No, sorry about that. It cut out in the middle of your reading, but thankfully I've read the first chapter, so I didn't get to miss any of it. I saw the applause in the chat. And anyway, okay, so what were you in the middle of saying when I popped back in?
What I was saying was that I don't like the need for the all of the caution and safety measures of the pandemic, but they are offering some interesting benefits, like being here with all 985 of you. One of them is that I'm gonna live stream narrating the entire novel. Yeah, that.
I think there's some people in the chat who will be very happy to hear that.
I did warn people there will be a significant amount of cursing because that scene is practiced. The rest of the book, it'll be like I'll hit it and like narrator Mary and Robinette and author Mary Robinette they don't like each other a lot.
How so?
Because narrator Mary Robinette picks up the book and is like, how many languages did you put in this that you don't speak? Okay, good. Real happy about that. And author Mary Robinette is like, it'll be great to have all of these languages that you don't speak. It makes it so international. Hey, I know. Why don't I have 8 characters in this scene, all with different accents, none of which you have in your repertoire? Go!
It sounds like my playwriting group when they bring in, it's like Oscar Wilde-esque play, let's all just do English accents, and then I just butcher it for 2 hours.
Yeah, that is essentially my job.
Awesome.
But yeah, so doing things like that. The book launch that we're planning, which is going to be, again, it's a thing that you have to just look for. If you sign up for my newsletter and Tor's newsletter, you'll get notifications. But we're doing an immersive theater thing where you go to the astronaut training center. There will be actors. I'll be there in costume as Nicole, and put you through some astronaut training exercises online. So it's something that I would not have been able to do in physical space, but we can absolutely do in virtual space.
When you say in costume for a second, I was going to say, are we talking evening gown or flight suit?
We're talking flight suit. Look, I've so there are mission patches.
Amazing.
So this is Elma's.
Oh, wow.
This is what they wear on the Artemis base on the moon, on their sleeve there. This is Nicole's.
Wow.
So I have mission patches. Those are also available as prizes for people who make it through certain points in the, and we're actually mailing you physical things in the actual postal mail.
Very cool. And when did you say this is taking place?
That one is July 14th, which is release day. And we're doing, the book tour has a number of different things, but release day is the one where we are kind of doing the most.
Yeah.
Stuff.
I got to say, it's been impressive to see how various authors have been able to pivot with doing these much more digital book tours during this time.
Yeah, it has been a process.
Well, no, it sounds like you're adapting wonderfully. And like you said, new opportunities.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, speaking of Nicole, I'd love to hear more about how she came together as a character, because I was really struck in this first chapter and in the ones that followed, how she's very much kind of code switching and navigating between being this politician's wife and dealing with, well, she's dealing with sexism in both spheres, unfortunately, but as the politician's wife and kind of the pretty thing that's trotted out at social events, and then as an astronaut.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about Nicole is that there is actually a real person named Nicole Worgan. This started as a Tuckerization.
Okay.
So in the Lady Astronaut books, in the Calculating Stars, I had offered a Tuckerization of some, you can be an astronaut, and Nicole was actually one of the people. And when it came time to write The Relentless Moon, I looked at the list of astronauts that I had available, and she was the one that made the most sense. She intersected the most with the politics and the other things that I wanted to look at in this. And so I wrote to Nicole, and I'm like, the real Nicole, I'm like, is it okay if I do this? She's not at all like this one. She's a doctor. She's lives in Texas. She's very different, but a lovely person, and so she was up for it. Nicole is, I would say, a combination of real women from the era, but also a lot of me is in Nicole, which was also the same with Elma. One of the things that I had kind of realized when writing Calculating Stars was that part of what was making it work was that I was putting in my own experiences of sexism as but shifting the context. And gifting Elma with some of my own insecurities, and the what would your mother think is a thing my mom says. I'm from the South. Elma's mom, aside from the fact, I mean, we are not Jewish, but aside from that, Elma's family dynamics are very similar to mine. And with Nicole, I was like, okay, I need to gift her with another aspect of self, and that is I'm relentlessly, if you will, ambitious, but also having to constantly walk that line between, between being acceptably pretty, but not too pretty.
Mm.
Being forceful, but not too forceful, because if you are, then you're a bitch.
Yep.
It's like if I am as direct as one of my male colleagues, it reads totally different. And my mom was an arts administrator for until she retired, and so watching her do that dance was really, really informative. She did all of these fundraising things, and I would see her doing those, and so that was very informative for Nicole.
Yeah. Well, and so much like Nicole is doing this dance across different spheres, as you said, Relentless Moon is a parallel novel to Faded Sky. Was that always the plan when you were working on the series? Okay.
No. And allow me to suggest this to people as a cautionary tale. If you think, oh, I think I'll do a parallel novel, actually think about that before you write the first of the two books. Because getting the timelines for these to work out was not easy. Probably the hardest thing about this. Actually, Calculating Stars and Faded Sky was originally going to be one book, and I got into it and realized that structurally it wanted to be two. It wasn't a length question. Structurally, it wanted to be two. And so I split them. And then when we talked about doing a parallel novel, the initial idea that I had for the parallel novel actually focused more on Nathaniel. And then I was like, but if it's a Lady Astronaut book, maybe we shouldn't send a white guy again on a novel. So,
and he gets plenty to do. I mean, he's very much a presence in the book.
Yeah, he is plenty present. But yeah. So then I worked out the plot for that, and the timeline was just challenging, because there are big places where time passes in Faded Sky, and I need to have things that are happening here, but then there are different places where time is passing here that a lot of activity is happening. It was like it was just
in trying to fill those spaces where the time was passing, you needed action to be happening. Did you find yourself going down like unplanned subplots or characters?
Yeah, very much so. There were a number of things in this book that I didn't know until I was in the process of writing it. I would say one of the biggest things that I tend to do is that because character comes very easily for me. I come out of live theater, so what's their motivation is like that is second nature to me. How do you express yourself with your physicality? That's just that's I have 20 years of training on that. Yeah. Narrative structure is something that is a more recent tool that I had to very painfully learn. I didn't have to know that, even though I internalized a lot of it with theater. I didn't have to build it because I was always using someone else's play. So I knew about narrative structure and how it worked with an audience. But so what that means is that when I am doing my planning, I tend to, the outline is the part where I put down all of the pieces that I'm afraid I won't be able to hold in my head. So I will outline the plot, the linear timeline structure of the plot, but the character evolution is something that I tend to let happen because it is a place that I feel very comfortable. So that means that a lot of the interpersonal dynamics were not things that I knew or planned. Most of the things that I want to tell you about, it's like this thing, are hardcore spoilers.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here like, what can I tell you about that is not?
Well, one aspect of the plot that we had kind of discussed ahead of time that was previously kind of a spoiler, but we feel okay talking about, is that there is a pandemic plot line in this book that you
Yeah.
You're not acting as Cassandra here. You just came up with.
Yeah. So since this is set in the 1960s, polio was still a thing. Now, in our timeline, we get the vaccine in the mid 50s. In the Lady Astronaut timeline, they don't, because that research was being done. A lot of it was being done in Philadelphia and out of Washington.
Ah.
So they don't like they they don't get the initial vaccine. They have to wait for for about a decade. So when it's happening, so it's like a brand new vaccine when they get it, and they don't get the killed virus version, which was the initial version. They get the live virus version, which is attenuated, and it was very effective.
Yeah.
It was super effective and like very safe, but every now and then, and incredibly, like I cannot stress how rare this is, it would reactivate. And that's like not great. But it was it's the reason that eventually they don't recommend that vaccine now.
Mm-hmm.
They prefer the killed one, or there's a different protocol that that doesn't do this thing. But knowing how conscious people were about polio, introducing it into this enclosed ecosystem of the lunar colony was something that was, it's a thing that they constantly worry about with the astronauts. That's the reason they go into quarantine before they go up. And the thing about polio, which is very much like COVID-19, is that it's got a really long incubation period where you are contagious. And most of the people who get polio have no symptoms at all.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. It's only like something like 5%. My numbers are off because it's been a while. Actually, let me see if oh no, this is an ARC, so my notes are not in the back of it. So yeah, it's been a while. So my numbers are going to are potentially faulty when I'm giving you percentages, but it's something like only 5% of the people who catch polio actually express any symptoms at all. Like most people, yeah, it's so much lower. But, and again, this is one of the parallels with COVID-19, is that if you get it, some people just have like, it's a cold, and you're like, yeah, it's fine. Did I even have polio? I don't know. Or was it just a bad flu? Because it had very flu-like symptoms. But for the people who got it and who like got it with the paralysis symptoms, it was a permanent affliction. And that meant that what you had was people who were alive in society and moving through society with this permanent damage. And one of the things that we are, it's of course, we're in the first 6 months of this disease, but the thing that they are seeing is that COVID-19 causes permanent damage in the lungs. And so it's like, we are going to have people who bear permanent marks from this. And yeah, it's a smaller subset of society, but no one is starting to think about that particular long-term health cost.
Unfortunately, yeah.
In countries that have a universal health care system, that's going to be something that they have to plan for, but that's a manageable thing. In the US, that's going to destroy people. With polio, the March of Dimes, like if you got, they had this fund, so if you got polio, you were taken care of.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so it was it's technically a pandemic because it's the moon, and not a lot of people on it. But you can also argue that it's an epidemic because it's a single population.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious if you had written, or if you were writing Relentless Moon now during our current pandemic, do you think anything about the COVID-19 situation might have changed how you wrote about it?
I have thought about that. I don't. Some of the things that I think probably would have shifted is that I probably would have had much more awareness, have the consciousness of your hands every time you are interacting with someone else. Is not something that I thought about. But I actually find it's influenced me much more the other way, that coming into the pandemic, having done all of this research on polio and the way it affected the US, like there would be quarantines where you couldn't go in. A town that didn't have any polio cases would set up a quarantine barrier, so you were not allowed into the town. Movie theaters shutting down. Swimming pools shutting down. It's also actually, weirdly, the rise of the sleepaway camp, because they didn't initially know what was causing it. And because there would be clusters in cities, they thought that it was actually being in a city that was the problem. And so they would send their kids out of the city to get them away from possible contagions.
I had no idea that those were linked.
Yeah. Nor did I.
But then research.
Yeah.
Awesome. We're about halfway, through our books and brunch, but we have so many audience questions that I'm going to toggle over to those for a little bit before I get to ask some of my own. Let's see. So speaking of the reading you were doing before, Laura Kay says, your narration on the audiobooks for The Calculating Stars and The Faded Sky is pretty flawless. I marvel at the unique voice you create for each character, not only the vocal accents, which help identify different countries, but also the range of vocal register you have between male and female characters, which we saw in this excerpt you read. How do you find the voice for each character, and how do you prepare to record scenes where multiple characters are talking?
Excellent question. So I've been doing this for a long time. I was trained in college. My minor was theater and speech. So I actually took a class on voice, and then competed in interpretive reading, which is a thing.
What is that?
It is doing this, but with someone else's text for a judge.
That's so cool. Like the nerd in me wants to track down videos of this.
I mean, fortunately, it was in college, and I am also over 50, so you won't be able to. But it's if you want to, it's forensics, the speech, debate, and interpretive reading. Anyway, point being that that the training that I had in college was that there are 5 aspects to creating a character voice. There's pitch, which is where in your register you are, high to low. Placement, which is you have several different resonators in your body. So American voice is mid-palate. British is at front of the mouth. And even though I'm not doing a lot to change my pronunciation, it changes the sound. So pitch, placement, pacing, which is how fast or slow you go. Accent, which is not just pronunciation, but also word choice and sentence structure, and attitude. So you can have 2 characters that have the same accent, but vastly different attitudes. I have to do this. I narrate Shauna McGuire's October Day series, and she, October Day has a fetch, which is someone who's identical to her. And Shauna, who is someone that I adore, but she will write scenes between Toby and May without dialogue tags, and I had to distinguish between the 2 of them with and because they sound identical, the only thing that I had was attitude. So you do a lot with those things. So what I do when I am thinking about characters, when I'm doing my own books, it's easy because I have been living with them for a year and a half by the time I get to it. But what I do is I think about where they're from, what their physicality is, which affects placement and things like that. And so I'll think about things, but then I also think about who they are likely to be in a lot of scenes with. And I will say that when I am writing my own books, as much as I complained about author Mary, the thing that I will do is that I will sometimes think, make sure that these two people are very different, or maybe you want this person. The reason that I wind up with people from with multiple accents is not just because it's the International Aerospace Coalition, but and that I want to have representation, but also because it makes it easier to distinguish between voices.
Awesome.
Yeah,
great. Let's see. Susan asks, I saw in an interview that you described the Lady Astronaut series as having a punch card punk setting. I love that term and would love to know, which other books would you describe as punch card punk? I can't get enough of the setting and would love the term to be more widely used so I can find more books like this.
Golly. I don't know.
I wasn't sure if that was a term you coined or...
It is, actually. It's, yeah. I'm like, because I don't know many other science fiction books that are set in kind of the 50s. I'm sure that they are there, but well,
that seems like a good place for people to start with their search. Sci-fi set in the 50s.
Yeah, I have and actually, science fiction actually from the 50s just has that aesthetic built into it. I have several short stories that are also set in this universe. So if you go to my website under Lady Astronaut FAQ, it gives you a list of all of the stories that I've written in the Lady Astronaut universe in their chronological order, timeline chronological order.
Cool.
Someone in the audience just mentioned The Shape of Water. Yeah, I would say that's punch card punk. Yeah, good call there. The other thing that I would say is actually reading nonfiction about the space period. I would recommend Breaking the Chains of Gravity by Amy Shira Tettel. It is the pre-NASA history of spaceflight, and it was very foundational for these books. That and Rise of the Rocket Women, or Rocket. Wait, no, I've just butchered that title. Anyway, they are. I have a bibliography in the back of my book.
Oh, perfect. So it's a great place to start. Yeah, other people kind of threw out Agent Carter, Hidden Figures. Oh no, it's, whenever you get asked to recommend something, it just goes out of your head. I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Syl says, the Lady Astronaut of Mars was fantastic. Will you be writing more stories in other universes with older/mature women as main characters? We need more of those. Thank you and stay healthy.
Yes. You can also read First Flight, which has a Centurion. And yes, but basically short form, yes. Especially because these characters are going to continue to age.
Well, that was actually going to be one of my questions, which was how far into the future do you see the Lady Astronaut series extending?
This is, I mean, as far as they'll let me write it. I know the book that I would write that comes after the novella Lady Astronaut of Mars. I know what that book looks like. So that's a book that would be set in the 90s and early 2000s. But whether or not, like, the list of books that I want to write is longer than I will have time for. So I don't know whether or not that book will exist. One of the things that my agent and I are working on right now which we haven't started pitching to people, but is a Lady Astronaut anthology where not all the stories are written by me.
Ooh.
And I've basically told people the whole timeline is open. So some of them are and some of them are simultaneous. Some of them are later. It's like, you know, it's a rich universe.
It is.
Whether or not we get to do that anthology, I don't know, but I am excited by the contributors who have said yes to it. We just have to start pitching it.
Well, yeah, speaking to the ongoing dilemma of, you know, too many books, not enough time. Leanne asks, what's the secret to your motivation, discipline, and organization? You accomplish so much, not just as an amazing author, but as a chair, programming chair, Twitter goddess, cat herder, puppeteer, and all the things being a human entails. Just how? Most of us lesser mortals out here celebrate the fact we got up and showered today as an achievement.
You should celebrate that. So I engage in a lot of structured procrastination. And the other thing is that I believe in a juggling philosophy that works like this. You work on a stage, you've got your plates, and you work on a stage with a very focused spotlight. So the only thing that people can see are the plates flying through the spotlight. They cannot see the shattered crockery at your feet. So that's why I look like organized and productive, because you're only seeing the spotlight, which is the stuff that I control. That's it. My husband, if he were here, my parents would be laughing at the idea of me being an organized person. What I am, however, is I am very good at spotting people who are better than me. And I follow the Jim Henson philosophy, which is when asked what the secret to his success is, he said, I always hire people who are better than me. So I'm very good at spotting those people and delegating to them. Like the conference, the Nebula conference, I have gotten credit for it because I'm the one that is out front and doing hello, but that would not have happened without Jeremy Tolbert making that website, without Kate Baker and Tara LeMay wrangling cats, without Steven Silver doing additional cat wrangling. Beth Dawkins, who was our volunteer coordinator, managed like 200 volunteers. And then can we just say 200 volunteers? And it's like, you know, and then, you know, like I can just keep going. Margaret Dunlop, who wrote the script, Adria Walden, who was our Toastmaster. It's like, I will take 100% credit for spotting people and saying, you're good at that job. Will you do that job so I don't have to? But that's the extent for which I should receive credit.
That's wonderful. Cool. All right. Jennifer Noga Davenroy asks, or says, finding diverse people in history and highlighting them in your stories has been a mainstay of your work as an author, and thank you for that. And the question is, what steps have you taken with SIFWA to advance diversity and awareness within that organization? Speaking of the many hats you wear.
Good question. So one of the things that I say, and so far I've only said it in private to groups, but I will say it out loud right now to the internets. My SIF was real white, and my secret, not so secret agenda is to change that. So what I have done is that when we have been doing, every time we interview someone for a position, I make sure that we weight heavily towards interviewing people of color. When we are making sure that when we did so I did programming for the Nebulas for 3-4 years. I'm not sure, actually. It all blends together. And when we went to replace me, instead of replacing me with one person, we created a team of 3. So the programming at the Nebulas this year was Kams Bara, Aaron Roberts, and Pung Shepard. They are, first of all, they're all phenomenal authors, but also none of those people are straight white men. Pong and Aaron are both women of color. Callan is a trans man, non-binary. He is phenomenal, and was the vision. And then Aaron and they were amazing. And then what we also do with the programming is we have an advocacy team. And this part I did implement and then pass to them, which is we identify the populations of people that the nebulas are supposed to represent and attend. Each seat has, each population has an advocate. Actually, each population has at least one advocate, and each advocate occupies more than one seat, because that kind of cross section is the way humanity works. It's like none of us are defined by a single aspect of our personality, and no population is defined by one person. So we try to have this this cross feed between all of the different seats, and the advocates review all of the programming. They help suggest and pull people in. So that's a lot of what I'm doing. The thing that we're doing right now is that we gave away 123 scholarships to the Nebula Conference. This month we have opened up. So we've got basically, I say this month, this year, if you're a Black writer, or editor or agent, if you're eligible for any active associate affiliate for SIFWA, your registration is free. Your membership is free. For the nebulas, we're doing it for the month of June, but I'm not feeling an enormous amount of pressure to end that at the end of June right now. Like, I think at the end of June we may expand that, but like that's a board question we're talking about. But it is the thing that you recognize, especially when you're in this longer, is that what happens is that people just don't have access, and there's the economic disparities in the U.S. that are sorry, kitten is being really adorable back there. The economic disparities in the US are so linked to race and gender, and it is ignoring that, ignoring the history of that, and the history of internalized unconscious bias, which I have too. That's part of why I write these books, is that it has created barriers to people, and especially with SIFWA. One of the reasons that I'm like, let's do the free registration is that for pretty much the organization's entire history, while we've given lip service to being open and welcoming to anyone, we haven't been. And if I'm going to ask people to come join the organization, asking them to pay money to take a chance on us, well, I know that it's going to take us, it's going to take us years to get to a point where we have even begun to think that we've undone some of the damage. And asking people to plunk down money and take a chance on us while we're doing that work, that doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that I'm working on.
Yeah, no, I was especially struck by the Black Lives Matter statement that SIFWA put out, I believe it was last week, and this action plan to support the careers of Black writers that I think is some of the points that you were going into.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, I have such a good board. They are smart, committed people. There was no, we didn't have to, there was no talking anyone into anything. It was such a yes and session. Yes, and we can do this, and we can do that. And then there were some things where it's like, and we can do this, but we need to work towards that. So like future plans, but it's such a good board.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So let's see, go back to, there was another audience question I wanted to ask. Oh yes, the most upvoted. What do you read for fun / recharging? I think is a pretty relevant question right now.
So right now I'm reading Docile by Cam Sparra, which had been described as a disturbingly sexy book by Sam J. Miller. And I'm like, accurate statement. Cannot put it down. I just finished reading Light from Other Stars by Erica Swiler, which is also science fiction. Also a Lady Astronaut story in many ways. And it's wonderful and also deals a little bit with time travel. It's really good. So I tend towards science fiction and fantasy. When I don't read science fiction and fantasy, then I'm going to be picking up romance or mystery as my go-tos. And then lots of nonfiction.
Yeah. Related, my question was going to be in sort of the brunch vibe we have going on today. Like, what is the kind of book that you would love to just spend all day, like in bed or on the couch reading? Because for me, I think it'd be romance or mystery.
Yeah, I mean, probably. So, like, there's the comfort book, which is the book that you're just like, oh, this makes me feel so good and happy. And for those, I'm going to pick up a romance for the most part. And let's be clear, there's a lot of science fiction and fantasy that is romance and just not marketed that way, especially if it's written by a guy. Like, actually, Guy Gavriel Kay, whose books I love, so many of them are romances. And I'm like, does anyone else besides me see this? So I'm probably going to go there. For me, it's what I want in a book is a book that makes me at some point cry out of overwhelming happiness. The audiobook that I'm listening to right now is The War I Won, which is the sequel to The War That Saved My Life. It's a middle grade. It's not science fiction or fantasy. It's World War II. It is phenomenal. I read the first book. I'm listening to the audiobook. The audiobook narrator is amazing. I have forgotten everybody's name right now. But there's so many moments in it that just make me go, oh, God, that's so beautiful. Why are people so kind?
Wonderful. Looks like our second most upvoted question is sort of craft related. What is your editing process like? Can you talk a bit about how you get from first draft to the product that lands in our eager hands and minds?
Sure. So again, I'm odd. Bear this in mind, and I want to preface this with for those writers out there that you shouldn't judge anything that you do by someone else's process, because process is totally related to how your brain is wired and your experience. The end result is the only thing that matters. So do the process that works for you. The process that works for me, because I come out of live theater, if I don't have audience engagement, I have a really hard time telling whether or not anything I'm doing is working.
Yeah.
So I write and have beta readers reading along with me. So I don't, with short stories, I'll just write the thing and hand it to beta readers. But with the novels, I stay 2 chapters ahead of my readers. So if I'm writing chapter 3, that means when I finish chapter 3, I give my readers chapter 1, because I found that's about the right distance to be able to make adjustments based on their reactions, like knowing whether or not that's playing, but not so far ahead that if their reaction is unexpected, that I have to make adjustments that I don't want to make, but need to. So that's my basic process, is that I write and hand to readers. I use the website For the Words, the number 4 thewords.com, which is an RPG in which this is amazing. It's an RPG in which the number of words you write and the time in which you write them is the metric for defeating monsters.
Ooh.
Quests and wardrobes, and the art is beautiful, and you have an avatar, and I'm embarrassed that I am much more likely to meet a deadline because I want a pair of wings than I am to because I have a paycheck. it's it's really embarrassing.
Paycheck.
Yeah. Wait, I mean, let's be clear about priorities.
All right, well, we're coming up to our last question, and it's sort of, I'll stay on this, what's the word? This theme of writing and process. I was going to ask, like, how are you finding, the energy to write right now or not? And also an additional question is, of the many hats you wear, one of which is the Writing Excuses podcast. Has that been kind of part of this process for you right now? Has that changed with the pandemic?
So I'm actually really struggling to write. The 2 weeks leading up to the Nebulas, I wrote nothing, like no fiction at all under any, coming out of it, I was feeling really happy to be getting 200, 300 words a day. The Spare Man, which is the next book, it's not a Lady Astronaut book, it's a standalone. It's the Thin Man in Space, locked room murder mystery on an interplanetary cruise ship. It's fun. But I need to be, it's due at the end of this month, and I basically need to be writing a chapter a day at this point because of how behind I am. It's hard when your brain is filled with narrative of all the things that are going wrong. Like, 2020 is such a long year.
We're only halfway through.
And I'm not in a population that has been directly affected by, like all of the things that are happening to me. It's like, oh, my husband and I wanted to spend more time at home together. Yay. I'm at my parents' house right now because we realized that the way to be safest visiting them is to actually just live here. So, but these are like, this is not a hardship that I'm encountering, but it's still, like Black Lives Matters affects so many friends and people that I don't know. And it's like, it affects, it's horrible and wonderful but I hate that all of these changes are happening because people are dying.
Yeah.
And I'm embarrassed that it took this for SIFWA to make the changes that we're making. But it's I'm I'm going after wings right now. I'm trying to put a pair of marionette hands for the words. So you find the tiny pockets of joy that you can find, and you cultivate those. You find the silver linings. Like, people don't make the silver linings. They are there and exist only because someone polishes the tarnish off of something that is a terrible thing. So no one's going to do that for you. So I am doing my best to find and create silver linings for myself and for other people. But it's still, it's hard. Yeah.
That's beautifully put. I'm going to remember that about silver linings and tarnish. And yeah, with that, we're reaching the end of our Books and Brunch. Mary Robinette, thank you so much for taking, an hour of your day to be brunchy and relaxed, but to also engage in this insane headspace we're in right now.
You make it real hard. Real hard.
I know.
Wonderful questions. And thank you all to everyone who's like watching this for the good questions that you were asking and hanging out with us.
And the conversation, yeah.
Yeah. Well, wow, we are at an even 1,000 people right now. So cheers.
Yes. Cheers.
Here's the thing that we learned at the Nebula conference. For those of you who have glasses, if you hold it up to the camera, we all toast each other. So cheers.
Cheers. Oh, and now you can see the stars on mine. I was hoping that would come through.
Oh yeah.
But so, yeah, you can pre-order The Relentless Moon, which is available July 14th at the TorCon bookstore by clicking the lovely green button at the bottom of our stream. You can follow Den of Geek and Tor on social media. Den of Geek is on Facebook, Twitter, and it's on Facebook as Den of Geek. It's on Twitter as Den of Geek US, on Instagram as Den of Geek, and on Twitch as Den of Geek TV. Tor, you can find at Tor Books on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Natalie Zutter. Mary Robinette, where's the best place to find you?
I'm Mary Robinette on Twitter, but if you hit my website, maryrobinettekowal.com, you can sign up for my newsletter. You can also join the Lady Astronaut Club, which will involve you sending actual mail to someone who will then send back an actual Lady Astronaut Club membership card for you.
Oh my God, I love the immersive quality of this.
Yeah. And then you can also, if you pre-order the books, Nicole Worgan will send you a postcard from the moon.
Nicole Worgan strikes me as the type who would be really good at writing postcards.
She really would. And thank you, Tor Books, for posting the link directly into the chat.
Oh yes, beautiful.
I say Tor Books as if I don't know exactly who's behind that.
I know.
While we're giving credit, Desiree Friesen, someone asked who set this up. Desiree Friesen is my publicist. She is wonderful, and she is arranging all of the various events that I'm heading off to.
Wonderful. Yeah, Desiree is amazing. All the TorCon crew. Seriously, this has been such a fun time, and thank you again, our 1001 people, for joining us. All right.
Do we get Dalmatians at this point?
All right, cheers. Everybody have a good rest of your Saturday. And as you can see in the chat, Tor Books is giving you the link again to all the events for TorCon. I've got another Books and Brunch tomorrow with Jen Lyons and Nathan McCarrick, same time, 1 p.m. ET. And we've got a chaotic communal storytelling event tonight with, I think, a half dozen authors writing a story in real time. So that's going to be ridiculous. But yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. And everybody's saying lots of pets to Elsie. So I hope you'll pass this on.
Elsie. Yes, hello.
She's like, how dare you?
Yeah. Do you want to come say hi? You want to say bye?
No. Okay. Sorry, kids. She's one of the things that we were going to do with conversation flagged, and but it did not, because Natalie is delightful, is Elsie was going to do tricks for you.
Next time, Elsie.
Next time.
All right. Take care, Mary Robinette. Take care, everyone.